Alrighty, guys, we have a bit of a bombshell to unpack here. And I say that not because this report really says anything that we didn't know before, but it fleshes it out in detail, in concrete detail, in a way that paints a really full picture of what's going on at Marvel Studios. So we're going to discuss this report from the Wall Street Journal about basically everything going on in the mind of Kevin Feige and the halls of Marvel over the past few years, as they've really struggled to regain that peak form of the MCU and hopefully heading in the right direction after Thunderbolts. And I say this is a bit of a bombshell because I've said this before. There's a whole hierarchy of sources, right? I'm sorry to say, if you take everything that every scooper says as truth, it's not going to work well for you because they can get things wrong. There are certain scoopers, like for example, Jeff Snyder, I would take to be a little more trustworthy, a bit more trustworthy than the other ones who post on Twitter because frankly, I've seen it. They get things wrong a lot. So there's that. But then you have your sources like The Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Deadline, The Wrap, that if they post something as an exclusive, generally speaking, it's 99% accurate to at least what they've been told. But then once in a while, you get these really big publications, not just movie or entertainment industry publications like New York Times, Wall Street Journal, that will post things about this. For example, the New York Times did an op-ed, or not an op-ed, but a report a couple months ago about what happened with Disney with Bob Chapek and Bob Iger, and it was fascinating. And when these publications put these things out, they've done their homework. They've really done their homework. So again, not to say that, we should take everything at face value and it's infallible, but to say that when the Wall Street Journal decides to post something about the MCU, it's important. And what's in this report, and if you want to go, because we're not going to go line by line through this report, even though sometimes we do read out some of these reports and go through a lot of the lines, we're not going to read this one line by line because it's just too long. There's so much to go through. But I would really encourage you, if you're interested in the MCU, if you're interested in hearing a discussion of what goes on within Marvel and what went on during, the highs and lows of Phase 4 and Phase 5, would highly recommend reading this. The article is called Disney Wanted More from Marvel, Now It Wants Less. It's from the Wall Street Journal, and it is fascinating. But we're just going to go through a couple of the main takeaways here because it's pointing to this idea that Kevin Feige is really trying to focus up the direction of the future of the MCU, I think in a promising way, and hoping to redirect the ship, right the ship, and turn it back to a sustainable and quality model like it used to be. So I'm going to go through a couple of key points here. First of all, this is what we all knew. When Endgame was happening, right, there were a group of writers and a group of executives that said, how do we push Marvel forward in the future after Endgame? Because Endgame was such a massive success. And before Endgame, what this article points out is that, one of the big reasons of success actually were the reshoots for the MCU, is that they actually reshot 35 days worth of Thor the Dark World, which the article points out is almost, the length of a lot of shoots for low budget movies, 35 days. So, but I think Lou D'Esposito was quoted in this article as saying, well, if it doesn't work, we can just reshoot it. And that's a foolproof kind of way of doing it. And look, the 21 movies that came before Endgame were all above like 65% Rotten Tomatoes. Many of them were in the 90s, for Rotten Tomatoes, and they were averaging $1 billion. So the MCU, it was foolproof to a certain degree. But then, right, around the time that Endgame was coming out, the article points out that Disney Plus was also coming out, and Kevin Feige, this is in the words of the article, I think, said, wanted to be a good corporate citizen and wanted to say, okay, we want to explore these avenues of storytelling. We're going to push out as much content for Disney Plus and the MCU as we can. And it seems like from the framing of this article, it really was because Feige was like, okay, I want to really be in line with the company, and I want to expand and tell stories, and let's do this, right? Let's do this. But then we saw what happened, right? The first few series, WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Loki were pretty successful, but then you started to see slippages. And I'm going to read this one quote. This is directing somebody, I think, at Marvel, somebody who worked at Marvel at the time. This is their quote. It says, quote, "The strategy just became expansion, right? So they wanted to just continue to grow and grow and grow and grow, and continue to really make more products. And what the article says is that it really, and we knew this, right? You're able to tell based on the product of the screen and just based on what we know about the Hollywood industry. But this article confirms it really stretched Kevin Feige thin. So much so that he then had to break out all the different projects and had a bunch of executives. They were called the Parliament, which is just kind of funny corporate kind of a way to frame that. But Kevin Feige basically put a couple executives on each project, each movie, each show, so that they were running it. But because of that, so he then became the final decision maker, but he was still so stretched thin that, people, what the article says, and this is so interesting, is that people would have to, they would work on something for so long, for weeks, and then try to get it approved by Feige, and all of their work would become irrelevant because he just wasn't able to see the process. And once he saw it, he was like, no, this isn't working. And it got so bad that even some staffers had to chase him down in the hallways of Marvel to get feedback for things. That's how bad it got. So then we go through all the fiascos. I'm just kind of giving a summary here of what happened with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and the fact that, oh no, that things weren't working. Secret Invasion. I think 2023 was probably the lowest that Marvel has ever been in quite some time. I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was more of a James Gunn thing, and Loki Season 2 was good, but that was the year of Secret Invasion. That was the year of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and that was the year of the Marvels. And it got so bad that Marvel. Once Kevin Feige realized that Quantumania was not a success, they really tried to fix the Marvels, it seems like, and they tried to really add a narration and voiceover to catch people up on the Disney Plus shows, because the Marvels, right, is starring two characters who were introduced in Disney Plus shows, Miss Marvel and Monica Rambeau. And that ended up, it didn't work out that well, because the Marvels is the lowest grossing MCU movie by a long shot, $206 million worldwide. It barely made $200 million, and it cost $300 million. So it was really bad. That was also the time we've heard reports about this, when Marvel decided to change direction, and they went to their retreat, their executive retreat, and they said, okay, we're gonna fix this, and we're gonna bring in Dr. Doom. Apparently Robert Downey Jr. and Kevin Feige had been talking for about a year at that point. And so they decided, we're going to flip direction here. We're going to move to Doom, and we're going to move forward. And this article does confirm, by the way, that Thunderbolts was really the first big step into this quote unquote reset. Because, and this is what's important, because so far what we've been doing, honestly, a lot of these things, it's just interesting to get the bigger picture of what's going on here. But these aren't things that we didn't know before. These are things that we did know before, or at least we're able to speculate on. But now we get to something interesting here. So the future plan here is that Kevin Feige is like, I'm going to, first of all, keep the TV universe separate. And the reason is because, and I don't think that's to say that TV characters are never going to appear in the movies and vice versa, but just for the most part, keep the TVs. I think the word they use is divorced from what's going on in the main MCU. That's why... for example, you don't see Daredevil running around in Thunderbolts. I hope that's not a big spoiler. Hopefully you guys, if you haven't seen the movie yet, that's not a huge spoiler. But, that's why these two things are going to be separated, right? The Daredevils of the world, the New York City of Daredevil and New York City of Thunderbolts, even though that, they're in the same New York City, right, in the MCU. And so Kevin Feige, and the reason is because the article points out that Kevin Feige has increasingly been telling people that he is, he's seeing from audiences that they're viewing the MCU now as homework. And that's been my concern, right? Even though I would be very excited to see Daredevil show up in Avengers Doomsday, people aren't going to know who he is, right? Like, not just the fact that he's a TV character, but there are so many of these TV characters now that if Moon Knight and Miss Marvel and She-Hulk and Kate Bishop and all these other characters and Ironheart and all these characters who showed up in TV shows first began to show up in the movies, it would just be so overwhelming. And Kevin Feige has realized that the movies have started and the TV shows have started to feel like homework. So part of the plan for the future is going to be to really just separate the TV universe, and he's going to take charge of the movies, and he's going to have other executives running the TV universe, and that it's not, he's going to try to really focus on not making the projects feel like they're required viewing for future MCU projects. It used to be that way. Like, I would argue that in the MCU, you could pick out almost every single standalone movie. Because again, I mean, in any universe, right? If you wanted to watch Sonic 2, for example, I mean, sure, you could watch it as a standalone movie, but you would want to watch Sonic 1, right? So I'm not, I think aside from the fact that, like, sure, if you wanted to watch Captain America, the Winter Soldier, watching Captain America, the First Avenger would be pretty good idea, right? But divorced from the rest of the MCU, even though it has Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. and Bucky, but, things like that, right? That's what Kevin Feige really wants to get to. So Kevin Feige's focus now is going to be on Thunderbolts, now Fantastic Four, and Doomsday and Secret Wars, really making sure that those two films are a success. And I think that that's a good thing. That's a really good thing, because now Kevin Feige's attention can be really squarely put on those films, making sure that they work. I hope they do. Thunderbolts was great. I loved it. Fantastic Four looks really good. And we'll see about Doomsday, and we'll see about the Secret Wars. But the last little nugget here that I wanted to talk about is that he apparently, as they shift focus into the future, this is going to be the plan. So we're going to have TV shows separate from the movies. They're going to be run by actual showrunners. That was something discussed in a previous report. On top of that, he has a plan for the X-Men. The X-Men are coming in the MCU. And this report says that he has a 10-year plan for the X-Men. So for those of you who are saying Kevin Feige is going to leave Marvel after this and whatnot, I still think he has one hurdle left to climb, and that's the X-Men. And I think that, yes, like the article says, we can kind of push aside the last couple of years as a quote unquote bad dream. I would argue it's really just 2023. Honestly, 2022 was okay in terms of MCU. 2021 I think was great, honestly, for the MCU. But I digress. But really just taking the last few projects here and just being like, it's just been a bad dream, and moving forward. But with the plan of now moving into the X-Men universe and whatnot, we talked about the Deadpool X-Men team up movie. I think that this is a really good plan. So honestly, I take all of this. It's fascinating. I wish it didn't happen. I wish every single project that came out after Endgame was great. That's not the case. That's not what happened. But I think that what we see here is Kevin Feige knows he needs to course correct. He's going to course correct. And I think that the future of the MCU is honestly bright. I think Thunderbolts is an indication of that. And I think that the fact that they're focusing up and really making sure that everything is quality going forward is a really good thing for the MCU. So I am really excited about that. I take this to be an encouraging thing, not a doom and gloom kind of thing, which is ironically one of the subheadings of the article as they talk about Doctor Doom. So I think this is a good thing. Guys, let me know, have you read the article? Because I would highly recommend that you do. And if you have, let me know what you think about it in the comments down below.